Alright, so, there's a game that has been like a supermassive black hole to my free time. It's called Warframe. According to Steam, I've sunk 1,000 hours into it now. This doesn't make me an expert by any means, but I have wanted to make some kind of videos again for some time now, and I seem to have put a stupid amount of time into this game, so hey, why not make something of it? So let's get this train wreck started, shall we? Hello, I'm Blaze, and welcome to my first look at Warframe on this channel. I'm going to start things off with a weapon review, but perhaps in a slightly odd direction compared to most. They aren't necessarily the best weapons in the game, certainly not, but I found them to be a lot of fun to play around with, and let's face it, who doesn't want to feel like Batman? So today, let's take a look at this pair of thrown explosive stun darts, the Castanas and Sancti Castanas. Starting off with the basic Castanas, you can acquire the blueprint for these weapons in the Tenno lab of your clan dojo for 15,000 credits, with the actual build cost being 20,000 credits, 2 control modules, 800 salvage, 200 circuits, and a forma, and has a mastery rank requirement of 3. Alternatively, if you'd rather get the party started right now, you can pick up the Castanas in the market bundled with a catalyst and its own weapon slot for 175 platinum. The weapon stats themselves are quite respectable, with the Castanas dealing a formidable base of 100 electrical damage to the point of impact, with a small blast radius and a perfectly workable 10% status chance. However, this thing isn't built for critical hits at all, with just a 5% crit chance and a mere 1.5 times multiplier. The fire rate has 5 rounds per second, which should be comfortable for most people's clicks for semi-auto weapons, and has a fast reload speed at 1 second, which is good because it only has a 2-round magazine, so your Tenno is going to be reaching for their holsters a lot. Is magazine the right word for thrown weapons anyway? There's no mechanism for ammunition to be presented to, the Tenno just throw them. Anyway, both these and their siblings, the Sancti Castanas, work by switching your zoom button to a detonator when at least one of them is out of your hands, either still in flight or stuck to the point of impact with a glowing triangle. The nature of manual detonation can be used to your advantage by setting up traps, sticking the Castanas to multiple enemies at once, or throwing a number of them onto the same target to pile on the damage. You can also detonate them mid-flight to deal damage instead if you have good timing. There are, however, a few things about these weapons that are not immediately apparent on paper. For starters, and arguably most importantly for how the weapon functions on its own, that 10% base status chance doesn't apply to its inherent electrical damage. These things deliver a nasty jolt that will proc the electrical stun effect 100% of the time, even if you use its base electrical elements to make corrosive, radiation, or magnetic instead. This means that these things have a great crowd control potential on anything they don't just outright kill. The reported status chance is only applied to whatever else you add on later, so even if the other elements you add on don't proc on a given throw, your enemies will be guaranteed to have an electrifying experience. Not only that, but the Castanas are actually unique as far as I can tell, in that it is capable of laying down 2 status procs simultaneously, so even if you do get another status to trigger, it will still also deliver an electrical status effect at the same time. I don't know of any other weapons that are capable of doing this, but feel free to let me know if I'm wrong. If it does indeed turn out that other weapons are capable of doing this, I'll add an annotation somewhere around here, so keep an eye open. Second of all, you can only have up to 6 of them out at one time, and this includes any extras that were created through multi-shot mods, but does not include the effect of Mirage's Hall of Mirrors. Once that limit has been reached, you won't be able to place any more until you push the explode button. This isn't really a big deal on its own, but it does mean that you will need to be mindful of what you're putting out there just in case you go to throw more and you just can't. The final, not immediately apparent thing, is a trait that the Castanas shares with some other secondary weapons. That is, it draws from the sniper ammo pool instead of the usual pistol ammo pool. Furthermore, it limits the maximum capacity of the ammo pool to 30. This means that you would be advised against taking a primary weapon that also uses that ammo pool, as not only will using one weapon use the ammo for both, but any ammo reserve mods that you used on your primary weapon will actually be rendered useless, and it would also have a maximum reserve capacity of 30 by default. So if you like to use bows or snipers, then consider something else as your secondary weapon. However, the pistol ammo mutation mod is clever, and uses the ammo type of the weapon itself needs. So you will still convert unused ammo drops into sniper ammo for your Castanas to feed on. However, it is interesting to note that the 30 ammo pool setting actually increases the capacity for the Ogress, Torrid, and Penta. Though you would still have the problem of both weapons using the same ammo pool, so I still personally wouldn't use that setup. However, these things do have one big downfall. It's not necessarily their fault, but upon testing, these things don't work against nullifiers. Seriously. Even if you go into their little bullshit no-fun zone bubbles and stick these directly on their face, they take no damage and no status proc while their nullifier bubble is up. Not only that, but it deals no damage to their bubble or any other units that are inside their bubble either. However, as the lightning status proc is both a damage and stun effect that chains to nearby enemies, you can hit an enemy outside their bubble, and the lightning proc can hit the nullifier, so it is possible to kill them that way, but that requires a specific set of circumstances that you can't really rely on happening at any given time, so you'll need some other primary weapon that can deal with them. Why yes, I do have plenty of salt to give out, but I digress. Now that the explanation on how the features common to both versions is out of the way, and some of my opinion on nullifiers, we move on to the specifics of the bigger Syndicate brothers, the Sancti Castanas. The Sancti Castanas can be acquired upon reaching the rank of Flawless with New Loca and spending 100,000 reputation points. Do note that you will need to have a free weapon slot to get them, no weapon slots included. Apart from a fancy new coat of paint, Sancti Castanas boasts a 15-point base damage increase over their non-syndicate siblings, an increased crit chance from 5% to 10%, and an increased status chance from 10% to 15%. The Sancti Castanas also require a mastery rank of 6 instead of 3 to use, but honestly you will probably be there by the time you're far enough along the syndicate path to pick these up. Also, they come with an additional D polarity. Great. At least this D is out of the way and at the end instead of at the very first slot like so many other goddamn weapons. These stat increases are reasonably substantial, with a 15% increase in base damage and a 50% increase in base status chance. The largest buff of the Syndicate weapon compared to the standard version, second only to the absolutely massive upgrade of the Cyanoid Gamma Core. In addition to the raw stat increases, the Sancti Castanas comes along with the Purity effect baked in. Purity is the Syndicate effect for New Loca, and charges will gain affinity while the weapon's equipped. When the Sancti Castanas gains 4000 affinity, the weapon discharges, dealing a radial blast of 1000 corrosive damage, a guaranteed corrosive status proc on all affected enemies, as well as restoring 25% of your Warframe's base health, and further increasing your Warframe's maximum health by 25% of its base value for 30 seconds. After Purity triggers, it enters a cooldown phase of about 10 seconds, during which time Purity will not charge from gained affinity. Any enemies killed by the blast have the affinity gain applied to the Warframe itself, rather than the weapon. Do note that the health restore effect will not take place if the weapon discharges while you're in a down state in a multiplayer game. It used to, but that was patched out some time ago. Now, let's take a look at how you may want to mod these things if you choose to use them. Apologies for the massive polarities in this thing, as I have indeed actually been using them myself. The Sancti Castanas will start off with just these two V polarities and will have a D polarity down in the bottom right corner. I recommend removing that D entirely and changing it into a V instead, then adding a dash polarity for your elemental mods. Starting off, I've added in standard base damage mods with Hornet Strike, Barrel Diffusion and Lethal Torrent. The fire rate increase here doesn't really matter. What this thing does is just a bump of the multi-shot to 180%, so you'll be throwing 3 with each shots for the majority of the time. I'd also recommend adding in a pistol ammo mutation mod just to make sure that you keep stocked up on ammo. An unranked version will usually be sufficient, but if you tend to miss ammo drops a lot, you can consider increasing its rank. After that, the usual elemental builds apply. Convulsion and Heated Charge will make radiation to deal extra damage to napalms and bombards for Grenier, Pistol Pestilence for toxin damage to target cloned flesh, as well as to boost the status chance some more, and an Expel Grenier mod to increase damage to the faction globally. If you don't have Expel Grenier though, feel free to build for radiation and viral damage instead. Moving along to Corpus, it's quite similar, but instead combine Convulsion and Deep Freeze for magnetic damage to deal with their shields, and Toxin damage to just bypass their shields entirely. Again, if you lack Expel Corpus, not hard as Expel Corpus can be annoying to get, swap it out for more Toxin damage instead. Just to pile on a little bit more of that shield bypassing goodness. And against the Infested, I'd go with Lightning and Toxin damage to make corrosive damage to deal with the Ancients and the new annoying Mutalist Infested, and add in Heat at the end to burn away the general melee units that come in great numbers, with Expel Infested to give a damage boost to the whole faction. Alternatively, if you're going through the Void, or if you lack Expel Infested, swap it out for more Toxin to increase your corrosive damage instead. Also, in the Void specifically, you may want to go with corrosive and cold damage instead of Heat for extra damage against shielding. Okay, all the semi-serious stuff is out of the way. These things might not be amazing, but I find them rather enjoyable, and they are perfectly solid weapons in their own right, with a good amount of potential for crowd control thanks to the guaranteed electrical proc. Not to mention, like I said, near the start of this thing, I imagine these are the kind of thing Batman would use. I mean, he'd probably use a less lethal version, but still. They're the kind of high-tech tool that I think would fit right into his arsenal. Then again, I'm not big into comic books, so maybe I have no place saying where these things wouldn't fit. Though there are a lot of surprises to be had as to where things fit, I guess. These won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I found them enjoyable. Their damage and status chance do make them perfectly solid weapons in their own right, and as a nice bonus, they do happen to look pretty cool too. They are perhaps not on the same levels as the Murloc or the Cyanoid Gammacore in terms of raw performance, but, well, let's be honest, not many things are on the level of the Murloc and the Cyanoid Gammacore. If you're looking for something potentially to have a good time with, I'd say that these are certainly worth considering. Until you have to kill a Nullifier, then these things will be very not fun. Seriously, bring something else in your primary slot for Nullifiers. You do not want to go in to hit them with your sword on a high-level T4 mission. They have Lankas. They will insta-gib you. Thank you all for watching. Any comments are appreciated, and I hope to see you all around next time. Perhaps I'll look at something more serious next time, or perhaps I'll take a look at something else that is more fun than top-end effectiveness. Perhaps this won't even get up off the ground, who knows. Either way, I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch. Good luck, have fun, and take care.